Hi there, I'm Michael Hill with Canine Chronicle TV, and I'm here today with Lisa Croft-Elliott for our Influencers series talking about people in the dog profession and who made them who they are in the sport today. How are you, Lisa?
Great, Michael. How are you doing?
Great, it's awesome to see you. So let's start off with how you first got into dogs in the first place.
Um, well, decades ago now. It started with my first Caribou Terrier, who had a very terrier attitude and was very guardy of me as a young child. And she decided that nobody could get near me, including my mother.
Mm,
So my mother said, we have to do something about this. And I enrolled in an obedience class at our local SPCA. And the woman who was teaching it was a very well-known Sheltie breeder in the area and was very active in conformation showing. And she was the one that said, you need to show this as well. And that's really where it all started.
wow, so it went from problem child to show dog.
That was it.
I love that. And then, for those who might not know you so well, how would you describe your involvement in the sport now? There's several venues I know you're involved in, but give the viewers a kind of an overview of what you do.
I'm really the person who's, I'm involved on all levels. I'm a breeder, owner, handler. I judge as well, and I'm a photographer.
Literally everything. I think that's great though, because I wanted to kind of touch into how diverse your involvement in the sport, can be, starting from somebody who just has, like a pet dog that you're having fun with. What was the progression like for you? Kind of how did you work into those different arenas? And who were some of the key players who may have helped you get into those spaces?
I went in and out of dogs as one does when one's growing up, because I did start. There were no junior handlers when I started. It was kid with dog.
Yeah.
Um, but I was also showing horses. I used to train open jumpers and hunters as I was
Wow.
growing up. And I was very involved. I was a cellist. So I had many avenues of my life, and I went off to school in England. So
Okay.
it was in and out of dogs. And each time I came back in, there was more passion. And even
Mm,
when I wasn't showing or didn't have anybody active, I was still attending dog shows.
yeah.
Sorry.
No, you're good.
Um, it it's just been a core for me. I think my involvement in horses really gave me an eye for dogs.
Mm,
And then as life went on, I actually came to the photography much later in life, after 23 years in the
really?
restaurant industry.
Really?
Yeah.
And what sparked that? Did someone just ask you to take a photo, or were you just doing it for fun?
Well, it happened. I had to take some time off work because I tore my sciatic nerve.
Mm,
And then I've been going to Crufts since the 70s. And a friend who had the magazine Rare Insight knew that I was going to Crufts and also knew that I was studying commercial photography at RISD,
mm,
and said, well, when you go to Crufts, will you take some pictures of this rare breed called Lauchen? And I was like, sure. So
yeah.
I bought a camera, and better than my Pentax K1000 that I had at that point, grabbed a bunch of film, read the manual on the airplane, got to Crufts, shot it, came back, sent the prints over to Rare Insight. They decided to run a whole collage, and it was
Wow.
terribly well received.
And then there was no turning back from there.
Well, it really blossomed insanely. I was working then as an ad director or art director for an advertising agency. And I would go
Wow.
off to the shows and do some photos of dogs and just candid stuff. And I was really enjoying it. And on Tuesdays, I would bring in the prints that I had made and we'd critique them.
Mm.
And one day, the owner of the agency walked in and said, you're fired. And I'm sorry, I won't do this again. I'm just appreciated the input. He said, no, this is what you need to be doing.
Oh, wow.
And so I started over again. And
Buckle up.
my partner at the time said, "Don't be crazy. You can't make any money taking pictures of dogs." And I'm
Mm,
like, well, one of the world's greatest advertising photographers says you can if you do it right.
yeah.
And I don't know if I ever did it right, but I then went on. I made a phone call to one magazine and said, "Hi, I'm going to Milan. And I've been doing some photos, candids ringside, and I was wondering if you'd like coverage from the shows." And they said, "Who are you?" And I said, "Well, I'm nobody. I'm just a schlepper with a camera." And, "Well, no, thank you." And then I called the Canine Chronicle and I said the exact same things. Uh, Tom was who I talked to, and he said, "Well, what's your next show?" And I said, "I'm going to Westchester." He said, "Show me what you can do."
Mm,
And that was what, 20, almost 25 years ago.
wow.
And
That's pretty
that's
incredible.
just how it all started. I look back at some of my old images and think, but he had
It's
the
a learning
faith
process.
and people
It's all the
took to it.
potential too.
I,
Was there
I came
anybody who
with a
was
different eye.
I was going to say, was there anybody who inspired your approach to capturing a dog in an image?
Elliot Erwitt was probably my number one, because he does it with a sense of humor.
Mm,
And I've always loved his sense of humor. Um, that really was what I tried to look for, is the humor and showing who the dog was. Also, in my formative years, I worked in front of the camera with a great photographer, David Bailey. And he taught me, because I was bored out of my mind. So I would keep going, why, how, why? And he was very patient in explaining things to me and how you bring people out. And
mm,
I applied those principles. And then I guess lastly, Henri Cartier-Bresson, the master of,
mm,
of photography and journalism. And I've always felt my role in canine photography is, yes, I capture supermodels and I love that, but I'm capturing history. I
mm.
look at the amazing dogs and people that I've had good fortune to work with. And these are images that live on long beyond all of us.
Right. And especially for people who will never see some of these dogs, that's their education for an entire breed sometimes are these great dogs.
It's phenomenal. And I think where I've also been lucky is, to a person, they've the people that I've worked with have been so patient with me, because I like to understand the breed before I shoot it. I like to know more about the
Hmm.
breed standard. I like to put my hands on the dog so I know the dog. It helps me in capturing the image. It helps me in knowing who the dog is.
And what a great education just as a dog person in general, to get that kind of intimate look into a breed if you don't own them or breed them yourself.
Exactly.
Are there any particular dogs or clients that stand out in your mind as impactful in your photography career?
I've had, I mean, that's really hard to say, because I've had just countless amazing experiences with phenomenal people. Whether it's people that are long since gone or still standing, that have worked with me and been patient with me. Peter Green then handing off to Ernesto and his patients and their patients, and the thousands of hours that I've had sitting in that grooming room at Greenfield.
Yeah.
Or Lois Demers, who we've been working together for 20 odd years, and
Yeah.
all of the various breeds and how much they've taught me about the individual dogs. Joan Scott as well. I mean, someone who is really patient with me because I want to learn more. And then
Mm.
other icons like Harry O'Donoghue with the Blacktail Wire Foxes.
Yeah.
Harry and I have hundreds of hours of me going, well, what do you think about this? And why don't you do that? And Andrew Goodsell, who handles for him in the UK, he lived 4 miles from me. So we were constantly taking
Wow.
dogs out and trying different ways of shooting them.
Yeah. What do you think makes a truly great image or an advertisement for a dog, other than actual confirmation? What sets the good apart from the great?
For me,
Yeah, for
because
you.
I think that's no different than comparing artwork and artists and how they want to show it. For me, light. It's all about the light, baby. Second, capturing who that dog is. They're not statues.
Mm-hmm.
They're individuals. They're their own supermodels, even when they're not in the mood.
Right.
To be able to portray that personality that particular dog possesses. Sometimes not necessarily the best personality, but you can see the dog.
Right.
And that is, to me, far and beyond what makes every hair being perfect or every foot being in the right place.
Yeah.
I like to be able to find the weak points on dogs and make them their strong points. That's my thrill. Patience of people, they joke a lot. People who've worked with me at any length. I think the best at talking about how I work was Lee Cox of Anatonia Kennels in the UK. He does a great impersonation of me because people walk with me. And I go, insert dog here. And I'll get into the position that I want the dog and exactly how I want it look. I can see the image before I shoot it. And he'll say, I'll just scream at it, move this, move that. And then they're looking around going, what the hell is she thinking? And then they see the results.
Right. Because they're not seeing it from the lens you're seeing it.
Exactly. I'm at a completely different angle. Right. Working with people that trust me. Sometimes I have to teach them about the trust.
Yeah.
I'll go ahead. I learned with a lot of people, I've got to do exactly the image they want. And then it's my turn.
Right. You earn it and then you can run with it and become the real artist. That's when the magic happens. I love that. So I want to also talk about the other avenues that you have involvement with: the showing, breeding, judging, and also how you've tied all these different kind of areas of involvement in dogs with other careers and other industries. Have you found that to be a challenge to be able to juggle all these different hats, or have they kind of fed off of each other and worked to their benefit?
I think, being the multitasking madwoman that I am, I know that absolutely they've all helped. Let's go back to when I started with my pet and I had my horses and I would just go sit for hours and hours at dog shows. And I didn't have a fear about talking to people. I just didn't realize that I was talking to whom I was talking.
Sure.
From Phil Marsman, Seaver Smith, Freddie Olson, Annie Rogers Clark. All of these people were just nice people at the dog show. And I was just saying, well, why this? And how's that? And I would just learn and watch. And having that as my foundation and learning dogs before I ever got to a camera. I came with the knowledge of, I'd been showing dogs and had bred dogs before I ever picked up a camera. All of those, I have a subtle knowledge of the timing and the instincts that these dogs might have that I think give me an insight on what I want to show. Right.
It informs your perspective behind the camera.
Absolutely.
That makes total sense. So, it's one of those things too, where there's also not that many, there's a lot of photographers in the world, but there's not many who do dogs, and especially show dogs. Looking back on your career and your time in dogs, how would you recommend for somebody who might be like you and just has, they're going to shows right now and they're having fun, but looking for other venues to, ways to be involved? How would you recommend that they go about developing that craft?
First of all, people have to decide what their style is.
Mm.
They have to develop their own eye.
Right.
There are plenty of people out shooting dogs. What I call the barrage of kids with cameras, or the spray and pray brigade. It's the great thing now is it's all digital.
Right.
So once you've bought your camera, you're there. I
Right.
started shooting when every time I pushed the button, it cost me money.
Mm-hmm.
So they have the advantage of playing around, changing their settings, learn what they like, learn the breeds. And then it's doing it. It's just doing it. But I see a lot of people come and go because they want the instant stardom.
Sure.
I'm telling you, you don't develop a craft overnight.
Any craft, any talent.
Not to a level that those of us that have been doing it for 20, 30 years, it doesn't happen overnight. Vicky Holloway, Gay Glassbrook, Towski, any of us, we started with film and we made a lot of bloody mistakes.
Yeah.
And I can't say that every one of my photo shoots goes great. A lot of times I'll say, well, I'm going to try this, but I don't know if it's going to work. And sometimes it does. And sometimes it's an epic fail. And then you have dogs that have issues. I've had to deal with dogs that are afraid of cameras. At that point, I put on the 300 millimeter lens or a 400 millimeter lens, and I go a long way away.
Yeah. But you have to think on your feet in those situations, and it just takes those experiences to know how to navigate that.
It's learn your subject. It's learn the timing. How do you get the right ear, the right arch of neck, the right foot placement in a ring? Well, watch the handler and watch the dog for a few days. Then try shooting it. Unless you just want to hit the button a whole bunch of times and hope you get it right.
Spray and pray.
Spray and pray. And I
love that.
Don't know about some of my colleagues, but I don't have the time to be sorting through it. And I also have a really awful habit, which is when I sit down and start to review the images, I get more fed up with myself. I'm my own worst critic. And I just start deleting like crazy. I've deleted entire groups from the garden. I've deleted entire groups in Half a Best in Show from Crufts. I've deleted almost the entire World Dog Show just because I just couldn't take it. I kept seeing mistakes.
Wasn't happy with it. Yeah.
Well, when we shot with film, I was writing down what my settings were. Now we can actually look. And it was great with film because you get the film back and you could get it developed and go, love it, hate it, love it, hate it. Here are the love it's. Okay, we're on to something. Yeah. Now it's sitting at the screen going, love it, hate it. Well, I can fix that. And then I get into the hate it, hate it. Oh, what was I thinking? Oh my God, I've got to go work at Starbucks.
Throw in the towel now. We're going home. No, but that makes sense though. And especially too with something like, in a photography session where you have to set up all, like you have to have the clients, the people all in the right place. And then you're reviewing after the fact. You can't just you can't make the garden happen tomorrow and then do it again.
Right.
So it's a lot of pressure.
A little bit. I prefer to think of it more like a challenge rather than pressure.
Yeah, no, that's a great perspective. And that's like a lot of components of the dog world.
It's, I've heard various colleagues complaining about, well, I'm not in the right place to shoot it. Well, being a good photographer means where you are, you make it the right place. Mm-hmm. What can you shoot and get the right perspective from where you are? And
that's a great point.
That's, again, something you do by trial and error. fortunately with digital, you go snappy, snappy and go, oh, I think I can make this work if this happens and that happens.
Yeah. You learn to think on your feet, to improvise and be creative. And
Constant.
that's a whole nother level of artistry. I love that. Well, thank you so much, Lisa, for sharing so much great information. It's awesome to hear about, the technicality that goes behind a craft that we sometimes take for granted. We see all these photos and these ads coming out every week, and sometimes we might lose perspective of how much goes into that. So thank you so much for sharing that with us today.
My pleasure.
It was so great talking with you. You have a great stay on the East Coast.
Super to talk to you. See you at a show.
Hopefully soon. Bye.